I've always carried a spark. 50 and still wielding scissors like I did in my 20s, maybe with even more flair. My salon chair welcomes everyone from barely graduated teens to college-aged newcomers, and somehow they open up to me as though I'm a peer, not someone old enough to be their mom. I like to think it's because I haven't let age steal my shine. I dress intentionally, keep my look fresh, and never walk into work without a touch of elegance. I notice how they glance at me. The boys, hesitant but intrigued, and the girls with that wide-eyed curiosity. I notice, and yes, it fuels something within me. But nothing stirs it quite like the gaze that meets mine over breakfast every day. My son Michael. He came back after finishing his degree, calling it a short-term stay. 8 months later, he's still here. I didn't question it. My husband, now retired, was thrilled, even if their chats mostly circled around sports recaps and grocery prices. But Michael's presence adds something else to the house. Charged. Still but not silent. He fills the space in a way that makes you notice. As though he sees everything. As though he sees me in ways others no longer do. I remember that first morning he was home. I was up early, getting ready for work, and padded into the kitchen in my silk robe, thinking the house was empty. The robe clung closer than I'd realized, until I heard the way his voice shifted. "Morning, Mom," he said, his voice thick with sleep. I turned in surprise, smoothing my robe down instinctively. He sat at the counter, steam rising from his mug, watching. Not in any overt way. But not like before either. Not like the little boy I used to pack lunches for. That morning I convinced myself it was nothing. But weeks passed, and his eyes lingered longer. He stayed near the hallway when I came home, asking how my day was, his tone softer, his compliments growing more frequent. And slowly I found myself reacting. It wasn't vanity, though I admit attention at this stage in life feels like a kind of lifeline. It was the closeness, the way he looked, not at me but into me. Like I wasn't just the woman who kept the peace or tidied the kitchen, but someone he wanted to understand. I tried to dismiss it. Told myself it was normal, just a mother and son reconnecting. But I caught myself choosing snug tops around the house, touching up my makeup even after work. I told myself it was for me, for self-esteem. But deep down I knew better. One evening, after a draining day and a faulty flat iron, I walked in to find my husband dozing in front of the television. The usual hum in the background. But Michael was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, preparing dinner. He turned to greet me, and his smile wasn't one of mischief or apology. It was deliberate, like he'd been waiting for that moment. "You shouldn't have to cook after being on your feet all day," he said, handing me a glass of wine. I sat down, caught between surprise and a fluttering that had nothing to do with tiredness. Felt. Noticed. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay beside my husband, his breath steady, his dreams undisturbed, while my mind raced with the change I felt in our home. Quiet, steady shift. And I wasn't sure I wanted to pretend it hadn't happened. Saturdays had always been my own. When we added the small sauna to the back extension years ago, back when my husband still had that restless energy, it became my retreat. A place to let go of the week. I'd wrap myself in a soft towel, carry my chilled lemon water, and step into the cedar-scented steam like I was stepping out of time. My husband hardly used it anymore, blaming the heat. So it became my space alone. That morning I followed the usual steps. Less, hair pinned up, slippers soft against the tiles. I reached for the sauna door, and heard steps behind me. "I think I'll join you today," Michael said like it was no big deal. Turned surprised. He stood relaxed, towel slung over his shoulder, athletic shorts on, as if this had been planned all along. "Really?" he asked, feigning calm. "You've never liked the heat." He gave a small shrug, already stepping past to open the door. The warmth rushed out, enveloping us. Thought I'd give it another shot. Followed, heart skipping. We'd sat in here together before, sure, but today felt altered. The bench was wide, Yet he took the spot nearest mine. Close. Not touching. But close enough that I felt it. I sat down. The wood was warm under me, familiar. My towel was secure like always, but I felt its edge more acutely. The way sweat collected just at my collar. The slow trickle down my back. He leaned back, arms stretching, sighing like he'd slipped into peace. "You were right about this," he said. "Feels good to slow down." I nodded, my mouth too dry to answer. "Not from the heat." His glance drifted. Not hurried, not obvious, but deliberate. From my face, down past my shoulder, to the curve of my collar, and lower still. He didn't turn away. And he didn't pretend not to look. When I turned my head to meet his gaze, he didn't flinch or avert his eyes. There was no awkwardness, no nervous chuckle. Just that steady, composed look he carried into the room. Self-assured, quiet, and yet strangely disarming. Caught me off guard. Stirred something deep that I hadn't felt in a long while. I moved slightly, adjusting my towel as a way to distract myself, to find something normal in the moment. But it wasn't just the heat of the sauna wrapping around me. It was something else entirely, radiating from within. "You keep looking," I said lightly, trying to turn it into a joke. His lips pulled into a smile, relaxed. "You look amazing, Mom. You always have." I let out a surprised chuckle, soft and uncertain. "That's sweet of you." "It's true," he said, voice lower, words more deliberate. "You don't notice it, but people do. Your work. Even Dad's friends seem to catch it. There's something about you." His compliment didn't feel like the ones I was used to. It wasn't casual. It carried a different weight, something that made the space between us feel smaller. My thoughts tangled, uncertain where to land. But I stayed right where I was. The room settled into a hush, with only the soft hiss of water striking the stones filling the space. I focused on the rhythm of my breath, slow and even. Sweat traced a path along the back of my neck, and I felt my towel draw closer against my skin. Michael's nearness sent small sparks through the air, sharp, unspoken. I became aware of his attention again, those silent glances. Not bold, not shy, measured, as if he were trying to capture the moment, to hold it. When I glanced back, he didn't shy away. Our eyes held, the moment hanging between us, heavy and charged. There's something about heat. It strips away layers, distractions. Leaves only the present, only breath and feeling. And right then I felt both sharpen. "I should go cool down," I said softly, though my body didn't follow my words. He didn't rush to fill the space. Instead, he leaned forward, elbows on knees, and his voice came out thoughtful, almost pained. "Do you know how alone you seem sometimes? In this house." I blinked, surprised. "I'm not alone," I replied, my voice quieter than I meant. "You are," he said, not unkindly. "Not because of us. Because of how much you keep locked up. The things you never let show." The ache in my chest swelled, sudden and unfamiliar. "I notice it," he added, gentler now. "Even when you think no one does. That cracks something." I turned fully toward him, scanning his face, wondering how long he'd been seeing through me like that. And why a part of me felt almost grateful. I meant to get up, to step outside, find a breeze, a moment of sense. But I stayed. So did he. Something in the air had thickened. Not just heat now, but intent. A kind of gravity pulling us inward. I reached for the door, fingers brushing the handle. But his presence, his energy, stilled me. I looked back and found him already watching. Intent. Unmoving. Then, without saying anything, he leaned forward, then down, resting his head lightly against my lap. My breath caught. My heart jumped, uncertain. I adjusted instinctively, towel pulling closer as my hands hovered midair, unsure. "My chest is sore," he murmured, pressing his hand over his heart. "Yesterday's workout. Think I went too hard." It wasn't his words that unraveled me. It was how he said them. As if this closeness was natural, familiar. As if placing his head there, warm from the heat, breath brushing my leg, wasn't anything unusual. I hesitated before laying my hands gently over him, unsure at first. His chest was solid beneath my palms, steady and warm. I traced soft, slow movements across his skin, grounding myself in the rhythm. He exhaled, tension easing. "That's perfect." I couldn't answer. My hands moved over firm muscles, the edge of soreness just under the surface. I found the knot near his collarbone, easing it with practiced pressure. His lashes rested against his cheeks. His mouth, relaxed, hinted at something between peace and satisfaction. "You've always had the touch," he murmured. Shaky laugh escaped me. "You probably shouldn't say that to your mom." His lips curled faintly. "Why not? You've always had a way of making everything better." Those words, it was the comfort in them that touched me. The familiarity, the closeness. But nothing else about that moment was familiar. Not how his breathing slowed to match the rhythm of my hands. Not how my movements, once second nature, had become tentative, exploring. Not how I wasn't touching a little boy anymore, but a man, one I didn't fully understand yet. The towel around my chest clung tighter with every breath. My legs, warmed by steam and the weight of him resting gently across them, remained still. "Michael," I whispered, unsure where my words were leading. He looked up, slow and clear-eyed. His expression was composed, but behind it, something more. Something ancient. Intentional. "I like being near you," he said. And somehow I knew he meant every word. He shifted, just enough that his cheek pressed more firmly to the side of my leg. His hand moved gently to rest on my knee, light, not assertive. It wasn't demanding, just... But even that light touch sent a wave through me. Still I hadn't moved. I wasn't sure I knew how. My fingers resumed their slow, thoughtful path across his chest, softer now, tracing calm arcs in the warmth of his skin. The heat cocooned us, the room wrapped in cedar-scented stillness. Outside, the evening carried on. But inside, in that small space, something had changed completely. My husband was likely still in his chair, half dreaming, unaware of anything different. And here I sat, hands on my son's chest, his breath warming the skin just beneath my towel, both of us caught in a silence that pulsed with something unspoken, something deeper than words. I couldn't tell you what it meant. I couldn't guess what would follow. But in that moment I stayed. Letting the hush between us carry what I couldn't say. Eventually we left the sauna. I don't remember who initiated it. Maybe him. Maybe I, pulled by the need for air that wasn't heavy with steam and something else I hadn't yet named. My skin still buzzed with heat as I tightened the towel around myself, and we stepped into the hallway, dimly lit with golden lamplight as evening shadows spread across the windows. Neither of us said much. I moved toward my bedroom without looking back, but paused when his voice reached me, low and steady. "Can we sit for a bit?" He was already on the sofa, stretched out like he belonged there, one arm resting across the back, the other motioning to the cushion next to him. Pause. My heart was still unsteady, still full of memory. His head in my lap, his hand on my knee, the calm in his voice while I touched him like he was fragile and familiar all at once. Still I approached. Wrapped in my towel, I lowered myself carefully beside him. But before I could settle, he reached out once more. "No," he said softly. "Like this." Then he moved, gently, deliberately, and guided me down, not next to him but onto him. My head resting now where his had been earlier. I hesitated, instinctive tension rushing in. But then his hands began to move through my hair, slow and thoughtful. He parted the strands gently, his fingers massaging my scalp in a way that made my eyes flutter. A breath escaped me without permission. His movements were slow, steady, each one deliberate. His thumbs pressed into the base of my neck, easing pressure I hadn't realized I was carrying. I closed my eyes, letting the rhythm of his hands draw me in. Felt like care, like being known. "You're always holding everything together," he said, voice near my ear. "Even when no one sees it." I couldn't answer. My throat was tight. His hands were unspooling every word I hadn't dared to say. I felt like I was unraveling, not from sadness but from something gentler. From the surprise of being seen. Really seen. By someone I never expected. The silence returned, but it was full now. Full of presence. Full of him. And then I felt it. His breath near mine. My eyes opened just as he leaned in, brushing his lips faintly near the edge of my mouth. Not fully. Not quite. But close enough to take my breath with it. I stared up at him, stunned. He didn't look away. His gaze held mine, steady and honest. "There's no one I care about like I do you," he said quietly. No pretense. No apology. And I knew he meant it. His hand came to my face, fingers resting against my cheek. A thumb grazed my skin, delicate and slow. A motion that should have felt misplaced, but somehow in that space it didn't. It felt like something that had been waiting to be said. The house was still. My husband somewhere else, the outside world spinning on. And there I was, resting in my son's lap, his hand in my hair. His words still echoing inside me. I said nothing. Not yet. I just stayed there, letting my eyes meet his. My breath paused in the space between what was and what might now be, trying to understand the meaning behind the quiet. And why some part of me didn't want to walk away from it.